Hey guys, I'm back. I switched to every other week for videos instead of every week, and that's why you didn't see me last Thursday, but great news, I am back again. And, I've been doing this YouTube thing for just under 6 months now, and the first video I made was about The Last Jedi and the fan response to it. Seems pretty reasonable, as the movie had just come out a few weeks before I started my channel, but people are still talking about it. And I started thinking to myself, I wonder if I still feel the same way about this movie as I did when I saw it the last time. I think I'm a bit better at making videos now, and I hadn't seen it since the last time I went to see it in theaters. So maybe those people are right. Maybe this movie is the worst Star Wars movie, or even the worst movie. Maybe I was wrong the whole time. I decided I had to know. So Monday night, I sat down, flipped it on, and rewatched the movie. Here are my updated thoughts on The Last Jedi, 6 months later. Let's start with the theme of the movie. Now, both people who dislike the movie and people who like it seem to always say that this is the theme.
Let the past die. Kill it, if you have to.
Now, no, this is not it. This is not the theme at all. Speaking generally for a second, don't look for the theme of a movie or the central message to come out of the mouth of the villain. You see, Kylo Ren's messaging is wrong. That's the way he sees the world. It's also the way Luke sees the world at the beginning of the film. The difference between the two is that Luke, with a little help, realizes the error in his line of thinking and is able to grow past it. Kylo Ren is not. You want to know what the actual theme of the movie is? Here it is. Look to the past, especially moments where you or those before you have fallen short as a teacher to help you move forward and achieve your full potential. Use the past to both others and yourself in order to learn and improve and not make the same mistakes. Don't let the past die. Let the past and figures from the past teach you. And that's why the heroes survive this movie and ultimately will win, and why Kylo Ren fails at the end of the film, because he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand. And Yoda pretty much spells out the theme to Luke because that's what Yoda do. Rey and Poe both act on it. Poe learns from his mistakes earlier in the film and builds himself into a mature leader from the trigger-happy and impulsive risk-taker that he was in the beginning. Rey makes a mistake throughout her entire life of looking for meaning outside of herself and eventually learns that she needs to define who she is on her own terms, which I'll get to later. And most importantly, Luke learns that you cannot let yourself be defined by your mistakes, but you must confront them instead of hiding from them in order to be who you're meant to be. Finn's arc is a little bit different from the other characters, and I'll get to that a lot later. To sum it up, though, the primary theme of the movie is this. You're going to fail. It's inevitable. When you do, you need to pick yourself up, think about why you failed, adjust accordingly, and move forward. Kind of reminds me of this cool Jor-El quote from that movie that I don't really like that much.
They'll race behind you. They will stumble. They will fall. But in time, they will join you in the sun. In time, you will help them accomplish wonders.
Let's shift gears for a minute and talk about Holdo. Now, when I sat down to rewatch this, I told my roommate that we needed to watch out for any examples of Holdo being a militant feminist or hating men. So we did that. And nothing of that description happens in the movie. Not a single line of dialogue or action taken by Holdo relates even remotely to gender. The closest thing she comes to this is calling Poe a flyboy, but that literally just means he's associated with flying. I know, I looked it up. And I think it's also worth mentioning that you aren't meant to like or trust this character the first time you watch the movie. Poe is someone we already like, and he doesn't like her and is immediately in conflict with her. Therefore, we immediately take his side and are put directly in his perspective for when Leia reveals that there was a plan all along. Now, since people will say this, yes, Holdo could have told Poe the plan. It actually seems like she was about to, in this scene here where Poe finds out about the transports and totally goes apeshit, but she shouldn't be expected to. This is a military organization. You think admirals fill their captains, specifically ones demoted within the last couple of days, in on every sensitive plan they're carrying out? I'm going to go out on a limb and say they don't. And to those of you saying that this role should have just been Leia or Admiral Akbar, that doesn't work, because we already know and trust those characters, and so does Poe. Therefore, the entire subplot wouldn't work. And one more thing. If the purpose of Holdo's character was to speak on behalf of feminism, which it isn't, why does that matter, really? Feminism isn't about hating men. This is all it is. I looked it up. Someone who hates men isn't a feminist. They're just a shitty person. Here's another definition that describes both people who hate men for being men and people who think that Holdo, Rey, Rose, or anyone else in this movies is here to propagate some liberal agenda. Now to a quick and easy one for a moment. Leia and space bombs. Star Wars outer space is not our outer space. Stop trying to apply our laws of physics to Star Wars. It has never held up because Star Wars has sound in space in all the movies going back to the original one. Bombs dropping in space as far back as The Empire Strikes Back, and people walking around outside of spaceships without warm protective suits while under the impression that they're out in cold space as far back as The Empire Strikes Back. So if these things ruined The Last Jedi for you, then I guess you really hated The Empire Strikes Back too, right? Otherwise, your argument holds no water. Now, we're going to talk about Luke for a long time. We'll start at the beginning. First, the lightsaber throw. First things first, this is not a joke. Yeah, people laughed in the theater, and it is kind of funny, but it's not even remotely a joke. This is visual storytelling. Without a single word of dialogue, we know exactly what Luke's state of mind is when Rey finds him. He wants nothing to do with her, the Jedi, or the lightsaber. Few people like Collider's Christian Harloff keep saying that this scene would have had the same impact if he had just dropped it on the ground instead of thrown it. Nope. Don't believe me? Try this. Go to two equally reasonable friends' houses, fill up glasses of water at both houses. For one friend, drop the glass on the ground. For the other, chuck it backwards over your head. The reactions will be very different. Actually, don't do this. Breaking your friend's glassware for the purposes of a social experiment relating to a scene in a Star Wars movie would be a pretty shitty thing to do. Saw someone recently complaining about Luke treating the saber that way because that was his lightsaber that he got from Obi-Wan, his father's lightsaber. Yeah, he has no reverence for any of that shit at this moment. He's only on that island because he feels he deserves to die and wants to take everything about the Jedi ways with him. Why on earth would he behave any differently than this in that circumstance? Now on to Luke being the catalyst for Ben Solo's turn to the dark side. Luke wouldn't actually kill his nephew. And the movie shows us that exact fact. He had a brief instinctual reaction that passes very quickly, and you can visibly and immediately see how horrible he feels for just that 1 second of thought. He has tears in his eyes here, and puts himself on an island for years because he thinks he deserves to die because of this exact moment. The movie never says Luke would try and kill his nephew. Stop saying that it does. The thought crossed his mind, just like hundreds of thoughts that you would never act on probably cross your mind on a daily basis. If you don't like the movie, that's totally fine. But don't blatantly ignore what the movie is telling you in order to justify your hatred. Now let's cap off the Luke discussion by talking about his force projection trick. I really don't understand how or why people are so mad about this. This is the most badass, most Jedi thing he could have done here. First, the movie establishes how difficult this power is when Kylo says that the effort alone would kill Rey. And before people start saying he should have just physically shown up, no. Again, pay attention to what the movie is telling you. We see a very decently long shot of his ship underwater. And yes, I remember Dagobah too, but the movie would not linger on this shot except to say the ship is unusable and it's been down there for years instead of like 2 minutes. Also, having him physically deflect the walker's blast bolts back at them would have been such schlock. There's a fine line between having your character be a total badass and having them be so overpowered that it's stupid. This scene from Rogue One walks that line pretty close, but it still works because Vader is just facing a bunch of normal dudes. Having Vader or Luke single-handedly take down massive armies of this scale would be stupid. At least in the live-action format. Animation can pull stuff like this off sometimes. That's the special thing about the Force, though. It allows you to do things you wouldn't be able to do physically. You're not a powerful Jedi Master because you're better at using a lightsaber and doing flips and shit. You're a powerful Jedi Master because you have a stronger understanding of the Force and what it's capable of. Luke does defeat an entire army of First Order soldiers here as he successfully manipulates his opponent and causes them to fail their objective. And this is the most Jedi thing Luke could do because
a Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack.
He's only there to buy time for the other heroes to escape, not to fight. Which plays into this line.
That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.
Now, this doesn't make any sense at all with regard to Rose and her actions, as had Luke not arrived immediately afterward, everyone she loved would have died here. But it does apply pretty nicely to what Luke does. He doesn't attack anyone. He just saves the ones he loves. This is also the most Luke Skywalker way he could have handled this situation. Remember, he didn't win in Return of the Jedi by overpowering Vader and the Emperor. Yes, he does overpower Vader, but he does so in anger and is just taking steps towards the fall to the dark side, just like the Emperor wants. Luke's victory comes when he throws away his weapon. It was an act of renouncing the violence of the moment and resisting that inspired Vader's redemption and the ultimate victory. In The Last Jedi, Luke faces down an entire army using only his connection to the Force and saves everyone without a physical weapon. So why did he have to die? Well, within the logic of the movie, it took everything he had to project himself that well for that long. And story-wise, his character's journey is finished. He's re-embraced himself as the hero he should be, saved an entire resistance without even fighting, apologized to his nephew for the mistakes he's made, and inspired hope throughout the galaxy. What more can he do? He is not the protagonist of this trilogy, so he would probably just be a background character in the next movie had he lived. Han's death in The Force Awakens was tragic and brutal, as it needed to be for that moment. But Luke's death really wasn't. It's pretty triumphant, actually. And he's at peace. He's smiling. In the end, he becomes one with the Force, just like all the great Jedi mentors who have come before him in this series. And yeah, it's sad to see Luke die, but we'll probably see him as a Force Ghost in 9. And it's okay for Force Ghost Luke to be more of a background character, because that's what Force Ghosts are. Let's talk about Rey and her parents for a little bit. The reveal that Rey's parents are completely irrelevant is one of the strongest decisions that this movie made, and it fits perfectly into Rey's main character flaw, which is another great decision that this trilogy made that sets her apart from previous Star Wars protagonists. Her entire life, she's been looking for meaning and belonging elsewhere. The new trilogy as a whole seems pretty meta a lot of the time, and that can be seen most effectively with regard to Rey. She's kind of a Star Wars fan herself. She had this Rebel pilot doll, wears the helmet while she's eating dinner. She desperately wants to be part of this story, but she's a nobody. And that's why the reveal that her parents are also nobodies is so crushing. It's the only thing she doesn't want to hear. She, like most of the audience, has been wondering about who her parents are and why they left her there. And there are a lot of people out there theorizing that maybe Kylo Ren was lying to Rey about her parents, and they'll be revealed in Episode 9 that he was just being dishonest to manipulate her. Watch the scene again. Kylo Ren's pushing her to an answer, but Rey is the one who says that her parents are nobodies. She's always known that. She wanted to come from greatness, and it was a coping mechanism for her to deal with as she grew up alone in a desert. She knew the whole time. He didn't reveal anything to her. She needs there to be a reason for everything that's happened to her, and at this point, she thinks she needs to be related to her heroes in order to matter. And this is how it all ties into Rey's primary character flaw. She's always looking to others to fill her life with meaning and to accomplish important goals. She waits on Jakku for probably well over 10 years for her parents to come back and pick her up. In The Last Jedi, she goes to find Luke so that he can come back and save the day, and then turns to Kylo Ren so that he can turn back to good and end up saving the day, never once considering that she might be the one who needs to do the saving. This is where the Rey is a Mary Sue argument loses all water, and I'll talk more about that argument whenever I do a Force Awakens video, but Rey is a very physically capable protagonist from the moment we meet her. So are Anakin and Luke, come to think about it, but she is not emotionally capable yet because she's waiting for her identity to be formed by relations to others. Her arc is about learning to value herself as her own person and taking the initiative to step up to the plate and get things done all on her own. She doesn't see herself as worthy of being a hero until the very end of this movie, because she's a nobody. Having her parents be anything of significance gives her exactly what she wants, which is something that you should never do as a storyteller, at least until the end of the story. The moment when Rey finally realizes that she is a worthy hero is this scene where she introduces herself to Poe, and he replies that he knows who she is, showing that she is someone who is worth knowing all on her own. Let's take a quick detour away from the positivity for a minute and talk about some of the things that don't work, in my opinion. Deleted scenes. Rian Johnson is on record as saying the theatrical release of the movie is the best version, and I respectfully disagree with that. They made the right decision in cutting or going with alternate takes for almost all of these scenes, with just two exceptions. 2 scenes of Luke and Rey on the island that absolutely should have been in the movie. The larger of the two is the Caretaker Village scene, or Luke's third lesson. The scene basically is Luke pranking Rey into thinking that the Caretaker Village is being raided by a neighboring tribe, when it's really just the male caretakers returning from the sea. It's pretty funny, But it's also the thing that prompts Rey to go to the dark side lake cave thing, and to prompt Luke to reach out to Leia through the Force. In the theatrical version, there's not really any stated motivation for either of them to do these things. The other scene I think needs to be in there is Luke has a moment. And this scene is just Luke going back into his hut after Rey explains what happened to Han and why they need Luke's help. He's snarky with Rey outside, but as soon as he closes the door, he just sits down and cries. The scene really shows us the difference between Luke's true internal feelings and the face he's putting on for Rey. His best friend just died, and in a lot of ways it's his fault. I think we kind of needed to see this side of Luke earlier in the film. You would have had to do some creative editing with the sort of Luke's daily routine stuff to fit that in there, but you could have made it work. Canto Bight. Now, this subplot remains the weakest part of the movie, but I actually don't mind it as much after revisiting the film. It's really not that long, and it does serve a lot of purposes that I did not see until this viewing. For the longest time, I thought Finn was just repeating his arc from The Force Awakens, but he really wasn't. In that movie, he found a person he wanted to fight for and help, but he never really committed to the Resistance cause. He even tricked them into attacking Starkiller Base so he could rescue Rey, even though he didn't actually know how to help the Resistance win. In The Last Jedi, his arc is about finding a cause to fight for, which he does by his interactions with Rose and DJ. I actually kind of like DJ now and wouldn't mind seeing him back in Episode 9. Rose is fine, but the romance between Rose and Finn is not. They finish each other's sentences in one scene at the beginning of the movie, and then have no romantic interactions or chemistry until she abruptly kisses him at the end of the film. I also don't really like that there's no real Wedge Antilles type character in this trilogy at all. I mean, this girl could have been one, but you blew her up. Carrie Fisher's daughter sort of is that, but not really. She's never in combat or anything like that. Just something I miss. And that's pretty much it for the things I don't like, I think. I want to talk briefly about the notion that The Last Jedi ruined all the mystery set up in The Force Awakens and disrespects the franchise and the fans. Let's discuss The Force Awakens setup first. The movie didn't really imply anything about Snoke at all. He's just the bad guy boss who fills the Emperor role from the original trilogy. Every character in the movie seems familiar enough with him as just this big bad guy. It was us, the fandom, that built up so much mystery about Snoke, running with like Darth Plagueis theories and other theories and like that. Then Kylo offs him in The Last Jedi, which is what Sith are supposed to do. The apprentice eventually kills the master when they're ready. I know these two are not technically Sith, but in terms of the plot, they're functionally the same. And it's okay that he's not Darth Plagueis, guys. None of my Last Jedi theories were right either. Literally none of them. Also, The Force Awakens leaves Rey's parentage open for interpretation, but it does most strongly hint that whoever her parents were, they're dead. And with regard to disrespecting the franchise, that's just absurd. If you take Kylo Ren's message of let the past die as the movie's message, then yeah, I can kind of see how you would think that, but that's not what the movie is telling you. I think the movie respects both the franchise and the fans more than a lot of fans do. It trusts it enough to tell a challenging story that fundamentally changes a lot of our understanding of the series and the characters. It grows the franchise past where it was, which, based on the reaction to this movie, doesn't seem to be something that fans want. Do you guys want this franchise to be stagnant and same forever? Because I don't. I want to close out by saying that the fans, including myself, do not have ownership over this story. It is not ours. But that wasn't always true, was it? I wasn't alive for most of this time, but after the original trilogy, the expanded universe was written by tons of people, and I don't think there was much of a barrier to writing a canon Star Wars story, provided you didn't contradict the existing continuity. As I understand it, though, the EU had some great stuff, and some real shit, but it was essentially created by the fans, so I get why a lot of fans from that era do feel some ownership over the franchise. But that era is gone now. And I do think the existence of the EU is a big part of why there's so much backlash against these new films. If you prefer the EU, though, more power to you. Keep reading those books. Make forums where you continue those stories and keep building that universe. It won't be canon, but who gives a shit? Like, if you like it, man. I love the Disney Star Wars movies. I love the original trilogy. As a kid, I loved the prequels, too. I don't anymore because in terms of filmmaking and structure, they just don't hold a candle to the originals or sequels, but you know, Star Wars can be for anybody. Like what you like. In summary, The Last Jedi is a film about complicating the ideas of the original films, regaining the greatness of your past while growing past the shadow of it, and finding your place in the world. That has a lot of weight to it. It stumbles a bit along the way, but it almost entirely succeeds at what it wants to do. A girl meets her hero and is disappointed by what she finds, but ends up prompting him to redeem himself and become a greater hero than he ever was before. It's some powerful stuff. And those are my updated thoughts on The Last Jedi. Funny how my Last Jedi videos end up being the longest ones by far. You may have noticed there was no video last Thursday. That is because I have changed from a weekly schedule to a bi-weekly schedule. I felt that the last couple videos I made were a bit forced and rushed, and I don't want to sacrifice quality in order to meet a weekly schedule. And I want to keep making these videos better and take the time to learn the skills to do so. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did and want to see more, consider subscribing and maybe even liking and sharing the video. And with that, I will see you guys 2 weeks from today. Peace.